The shocking discovery. The Terra Nova glided through the vastness of space, its engines humming softly as it sailed past distant stars. Captain Vela stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the galaxy's edge. She had always been a cautious leader, but today, something felt different. The crew had just received a mysterious distress signal, one they couldn't ignore. It came from the outer rim of the galaxy, an area known for being quiet, peaceful, and free from conflict. At least, that's what the records said. But this distress signal was different. It wasn't just a cry for help. It carried an unsettling tone. "Captain, you should see this," Lieutenant Jorek said, his voice tight with urgency. He was standing at the communications console, his face pale. "What is it, Jorek?" Captain Vela asked, stepping closer. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw his expression. It's from an alien planet. The signal was coded, but I managed to break it," Jorek explained. He pressed a button, and the message played across the ship's monitors. A garbled voice echoed in the room. "Human children, taken, imprisoned, experiments." The words hit Captain Vela like a punch to the gut. Human children, taken, imprisoned. This couldn't be happening. She had to hear more. "Play it again, slowly," she ordered. The message repeated, clearer this time, and Vela's mind raced. It was as if the universe had suddenly flipped upside down. There was no way this could be real. Who would dare kidnap human children? The Earth had just begun to explore the galaxy. Humanity was still considered weak by most galactic powers. But now, someone had crossed the line. Someone had taken children from Earth, and not just any children, but the youngest and most vulnerable. Captain Vela felt a cold chill run through her as she processed the information. The message was coming from an uncharted planet near the edge of known space, one that was home to a race of cruel and feared aliens. "This could be a trap," Lieutenant Jorek said, reading her expression. "But we can't just ignore it, Captain." Vela nodded slowly, her mind already working through the possibilities. If the signal was real, then the aliens were far more dangerous than anyone had expected. No one dared to kidnap children, unless they intended to do something unspeakable with them. The thought made Vela's stomach churn. "We need to get there," she said, her voice firm. "Prepare the crew. We're heading to the coordinates of that signal." "Understood, Captain," Jorek replied, his voice filled with resolve. As the Terra Nova changed course toward the unknown planet, Captain Vela couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than they realized. She gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. "This isn't just another rescue mission," Vela began, looking around at her trusted crew. "We've all heard the distress signal. Human children are being held prisoner on an alien world. We don't know who's behind it, or why they've been taken, but we can't leave them there." Her first officer, Commander Alaric, spoke up. "You're right, Captain, but we don't know what we're up against. We've never dealt with these aliens before. If they're powerful enough to capture human children, we could be walking into a war." Vela looked at her team, seeing the concern in their eyes. They had always been ready for anything, but this was something different. They were fighting for the lives of children, their own people. The stakes had never been higher. "We're not just going to fight," Captain Vela said, her voice unwavering. "We're going to free them. We're going to show the galaxy that humanity is stronger than anyone thought. We're going to show them that we will not be intimidated. The galaxy has underestimated us for too long." The crew nodded, their determination growing with every word. They were ready. There was no turning back now. As the ship approached the coordinates, the planet came into view. It was an ugly world, dark, barren, and cold, with jagged mountains that reached up like claws into a dark sky. The atmosphere was thick with a strange metallic scent. This was not a place for children. This was a place for danger. The Terra Nova descended toward the planet's surface, and Vela's heart pounded in her chest. She knew they had to act quickly. If the aliens were as ruthless as the signal suggested, they wouldn't waste time. They would kill anyone who stood in their way. "Prepare for landing," Captain Vela commanded. As the ship touched down, the team made their final preparations. They suited up in their combat gear, checking their weapons and equipment one last time. The tension on board was palpable. Everyone knew the gravity of the situation. There was no guarantee they would succeed. The children's lives were in their hands, and the mission was more dangerous than any of them had ever faced. Captain Vela stood at the entrance of the ship, staring out at the desolate landscape. The time for planning was over. Now, it was time for action. They would find the children, rescue them, and bring them back to Earth, and they would make sure that whoever was responsible for this crime would pay for it. The air was thick with tension as the crew prepared to step into the unknown. The fate of the children and the future of humanity rested on their shoulders. The mission was about to begin. The unseen enemy. The landing was smooth, but the atmosphere was anything but welcoming. As Captain Vela and her crew stepped off the Terra Nova, they were met with an eerie silence. The planet was cold, its surface covered in sharp, rocky outcrops, and the sky above them was a swirling mix of gray clouds, giving it an oppressive feel. The wind howled in the distance, carrying with it a faint metallic scent, like rust and decay. It was the kind of place where no one would ever choose to live, let alone bring children. Vela tightened her grip on her weapon as she scanned the surroundings. The distress signal had led them here, but where were the children? What had they been taken for? She couldn't let the questions distract her now. They had a mission: find the children and bring them back, no matter what. "Commander Alaric, take the lead," Vela ordered. "Everyone stay sharp." Alaric nodded and signaled the team to move forward. The ground beneath their boots crunched with every step as they navigated the rocky terrain. The further they traveled from the ship, the more unsettling the landscape became. There were no signs of life, not even the usual sounds of wildlife or distant creatures. Only the howling wind filled the air. It was as if the planet had been abandoned by nature itself, leaving only the remnants of something once thriving, now lost and forgotten. "Captain," Lieutenant Jorek called, his voice tinged with concern. "I've detected something unusual on my scanner. It's faint, but there are power readings in the area up ahead." Vela's heart skipped a beat. This was it, their first real lead. "Stay cautious, everyone," she said, tightening her stance. "Let's check it out." The team moved swiftly, following Jorek's readings through the rough terrain. It didn't take long before they came upon what appeared to be a massive structure. It was hidden beneath the jagged cliffs, almost camouflaged by the surrounding rock. The metallic structure was old, its surface rusted and scarred by time, but the faint hum of power indicated it was still operational. The crew moved cautiously, their steps silent as they approached the entrance. The door was massive, covered in strange symbols none of them recognized. As Jorek stepped forward to examine it, a sudden voice echoed through the air, deep and cold. "Stop. Turn back." The crew froze, their weapons raised instantly. The voice wasn't coming from anyone on their team. It came from the shadows, unseen and menacing. "Who's there?" Captain Vela demanded, her voice steady but her heart racing. From the darkness emerged a figure, a tall, imposing alien creature with dark, weathered skin and glowing red eyes. Its appearance was unnatural, its presence a terrifying reminder of just how far humanity had yet to go in understanding the galaxy. The creature was part of a race that was known for its cruelty. Its people were feared across the stars. But this one was different. There was a cold intelligence behind its eyes, a calculating cruelty that sent shivers down Vela's spine. "I said turn back," the alien repeated, its voice low and full of authority. "This is not a place for your kind." The crew remained silent, eyes scanning the creature, looking for any weakness. Vela stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. "We're here for the children," she said firmly. "We've come to take them back to Earth." At her words, the alien's eyes narrowed, and a slow, mocking grin spread across its face. Children, it scoffed. You think you can just take them. These are not the children you know. They are a part of something much greater now. They have been chosen. Vela's heart skipped a beat. Chosen? Chosen for what? The chilling words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't let her thoughts wander. She needed answers. Who are you? She demanded. What have you done to them? The alien's grin widened, and it stepped closer. You should not have come here, human. You cannot understand what is happening on this world. But soon you will. And you will regret it. With that, the alien turned and disappeared back into the shadows. The door to the structure creaked as it opened, revealing a dark corridor that led further into the heart of the alien stronghold. Stay focused, Vela ordered, her voice cold. We're not leaving without those children. The crew made their way into the depths of the structure, each step taking them deeper into the unknown. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. It was as if the building itself was alive, watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. They finally reached a large chamber, where the true horror of the situation became clear. Inside, the children were being held, dozens of them. They were in cages, their faces pale and frightened, their bodies bruised and weak. Vela's heart ached as she saw the helpless children, but there was no time to mourn. They had to act, and they had to act fast. Vela's voice was steady but full of anger. We're getting you out of here. The children looked up, some of them recognizing the humans in front of them. Their eyes were filled with a mixture of hope and fear. They had been trapped here for far too long, and now they finally had a chance to escape. But as the crew moved to free them, they realized that the alien that had warned them earlier was not the only threat. The entire chamber suddenly shifted, and the walls began to close in, trapping them. We've been caught in a trap, Jorek whispered, panic creeping into his voice. The cold, mechanical voice of the alien echoed through the chamber once again. You were warned. Now, you will pay the price. The walls of the chamber moved faster, and the crew had only seconds to react. Captain Vela's mind raced. She wasn't going to let this be the end. She would not let these children become the aliens' prisoners, and she wouldn't let her crew fall into their trap. We fight, Vela declared, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. We fight until the last breath. And with that, the battle for the children, and for their survival, began. The trap tightens. The sound of the walls closing echoed through the chamber, growing louder with every passing second. The air grew heavy, thick with the sense of impending doom. Captain Vela's heart raced, but she refused to let the panic take control. Her crew needed her. The children needed her. Jorek, get to the control panel. Vela barked, her voice steady despite the chaos. Alaric, cover the perimeter. The rest of you, keep the children safe. Without hesitation, her crew sprang into action. Jorek sprinted toward a large terminal in the far corner of the chamber, his fingers flying over the controls as he tried to override the system. Alaric positioned himself near the entrance, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The rest of the crew surrounded the children, their weapons raised, ready to defend at a moment's notice. Vela stood at the front, watching as the walls continued to close in. The room felt smaller with each passing moment, the walls creeping forward like the fingers of a giant, suffocating hand. They had no time to lose. Come on, Jorek, Vela muttered under her breath, willing him to succeed. The screen flickered, displaying an endless series of commands and symbols Vela didn't understand. Time was running out. Captain, Jorek called. I've almost got it. Just a few more seconds. The walls were nearly halfway to closing in on the crew. The pressure in the room was building. Vela could feel it in her chest, every breath coming harder and faster. If Jorek didn't succeed, they would be crushed, trapped in this metal tomb, just like the children who had been imprisoned here for so long. A sudden shriek rang out, followed by a loud bang as one of the metal panels near the far wall dropped to the ground with a loud clatter. Vela's eyes darted toward the noise, her weapon ready. The chamber was dark, lit only by the flickering lights above, and the eerie red glow from the alien machinery surrounding them. "Something's coming." Alaric's voice was grim, his eyes narrowed. Vela barely had time to react before the first of the alien creatures appeared from the shadows. It was tall, with glowing green eyes and sharp, jagged teeth. It snarled, revealing rows of razor-sharp fangs, its massive claws scraping against the floor as it moved toward them. "Get down," Vela shouted, diving to the side as the alien lunged at her. She fired her weapon, the blast hitting the creature in the chest, but it didn't seem to slow it down. The alien screeched, swiping at her with its claws, narrowly missing as she rolled out of the way. "Captain, move," Jorak shouted. "I've got the system hacked, but it's not enough. The walls are still closing. We need to destroy the control center." Vela's mind raced. The trap was worse than they thought. The alien wasn't just trying to kill them. It was trying to ensure they never escaped. If they didn't act fast, they would all be trapped inside this room, never to see the light of day again. "Alaric, help Jorak," Vela ordered, her voice steady even as the creature advanced on her. "Everyone else, hold the line. Keep those kids safe." Alaric nodded, sprinting toward Jorak as the rest of the crew engaged the alien. Vela wasn't sure how many more of those creatures were lurking in the shadows, but she knew they couldn't afford to find out. The safety of her crew and the children depended on getting out of here. Vela shot again, this time hitting the alien's leg. It stumbled, giving her just enough time to roll behind a large piece of machinery for cover. Her pulse was racing, but she couldn't afford to let fear take control. Not now. Not when they were so close. "Jorak, can you hurry it up?" she called. "I'm trying." Jorak shouted back, his hands moving frantically over the terminal. "I need more time. This system is ancient, and the security is tighter than I thought." Vela cursed under her breath. Time was running out, and the alien was circling, waiting for its chance to strike. She peered around the corner of the machine, her eyes narrowing as she aimed once more. This time, she hit the creature directly in the head. It screeched, collapsing to the ground in a heap. "That's one down," Vela muttered, her heart pounding. "How many more?" The sound of footsteps approaching interrupted her thoughts. Another alien appeared from the shadows, this one larger than the first. It was followed by several more, their eyes glowing with malice. "Not good," Alaric muttered, turning to face the new threat. "We got a whole pack coming our way." Vela's mind raced. There was no way they could fight all of these creatures and keep the children safe. They had to destroy the control center before it was too late. "Everyone, focus fire on the control center," she ordered. "Jorak, you lead the way. Get us out of here." Jorak nodded, his face set in determination. The crew pushed forward, weapons blazing as they cut through the alien attackers. It was a hard fight, but with every shot they took, they managed to drive the creatures back. In the midst of the chaos, the walls continued to close, their movement slow but inevitable. Vela could hear the pressure building, feel the walls creeping in closer. She was running out of time. With a final push, they reached the control panel. Jorak and Alaric worked in unison, using every ounce of their strength and knowledge to break through the system's defenses. Vela stood guard, watching as more and more alien creatures poured into the chamber, their eyes filled with rage. The air crackled with tension. Every second felt like an eternity. And then, just as the walls were about to crush them all, Jorak's voice rang out. "I've got it. We're free." The control panel sparked and crackled as the wall mechanism stopped. The walls halted their movement just inches from the crew. The chamber fell silent, the danger temporarily over. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, but Vela's eyes never left the children. They were still trapped in their cages, still waiting to be freed. "We're not done yet," Vela said, her voice cold but determined. We still have to get these kids out of here. The fight wasn't over, but they had won the first round. And now they had to make sure the children would never have to face this nightmare again. Unleashing the truth. The cage door creaked open with a groan, its rusty hinges protesting after years of neglect. Vela's hands trembled slightly as she held her weapon steady, scanning the room for any remaining threats. Behind her, the children peered cautiously out of their metal prisons, their eyes wide with fear and hope. "Stay close," Vela whispered, her voice softer than usual. "We'll get you out of here, I promise." The chamber was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery in the background. Jorek was working furiously at the central console, his brow furrowed in concentration. Sparks flew as he rewired the ancient system, attempting to override the security protocols that kept the rest of the cages locked. "Captain," Alaric said, his voice low but urgent, "we need to move faster." That last skirmish stirred up the hive. "More of them will come soon." "I know," Vela replied, her jaw tightening. "But we're not leaving without the kids. They've suffered enough." As if in response to her words, a low rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the corridors. The aliens were regrouping. Their time was running out. "Jorek, how much longer?" Vela asked, her patience wearing thin. "Almost there," he muttered, not looking up. "The system is ancient, but it's not as complicated as I thought. Just a little more." A loud clank interrupted him, followed by the sound of metal scraping against stone. The crew turned toward the entrance, their weapons raised. A massive door slid open, revealing a group of heavily armed aliens. They stepped into the chamber, their glowing green eyes locking onto the humans. "Well, so much for taking it slow," Alaric said, his tone grim. "Defensive positions," Vela ordered, stepping in front of the children. "Protect them at all costs." The aliens didn't wait. They charged forward, their weapons blazing. Vela fired back, her shots precise and calculated. The rest of the crew followed suit, creating a defensive line around the children. It was a desperate battle, the humans outnumbered and outgunned, but they held their ground. Amidst the chaos, Jorek finally let out a triumphant shout. "Got it. The cages are unlocked." The children hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust their rescuers. Vela turned to them, her voice firm but kind. "Run, stay behind us, and head for the exit. We'll protect you." One by one, the children emerged from their cages, their small, fragile forms a stark contrast to the brutal fight raging around them. They clung to each other as they moved, their steps cautious but determined. "Keep them moving," Vela shouted to her crew. "Don't let them stop." As the last child passed by, Vela felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. The aliens were relentless, their attacks growing more ferocious with each passing second. One of them lunged at Jorek, its claws inches from his face. Alaric intervened just in time, his blade slicing through the creature with a sickening crunch. "We can't hold them off forever," Alaric yelled. "We need to fall back." Vela nodded, her mind racing. They couldn't afford to stay here any longer. The children were safe for now, but if they didn't leave soon, none of them would make it out alive. "Retreat," she ordered. "Fall back to the escape route. We'll cover the rear." The crew began to move, their formation tight as they guided the children toward the exit. Vela stayed at the back, her weapon firing nonstop as she held the aliens at bay. The chamber was a blur of smoke and fire, the air thick with the stench of burning metal. As they neared the exit, a deafening roar shook the ground. Vela turned to see a massive alien creature emerge from the shadows. It was twice the size of the others, its body covered in jagged armor and its eyes burning with rage. "Oh, great," Alaric muttered. "They brought the big one." "Keep moving," Vela shouted. "I'll handle this." "Captain, you can't," Alaric began, but she cut him off. "That's an order. Get the children to safety." Reluctantly, Alaric obeyed, leading the crew and the children toward the exit. Vela turned to face the creature, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. She raised her weapon, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Come on," she said under her breath, her voice filled with determination. "Let's see what you've got." The creature roared again, charging at her with incredible speed. Vela fired, her shots hitting its armor but barely slowing it down. She dodged to the side as it lunged, narrowly avoiding its massive claws. The fight was brutal, each second feeling like an eternity. Vela's movements were quick and precise, but the creature was relentless. She knew she couldn't hold it off forever. She needed a plan, and fast. Her eyes darted around the chamber, searching for anything she could use. Then she saw it, a large, unstable-looking power core near the center of the room. If she could lure the creature toward it, Vela fired another shot, this time aiming for the ground near the core. The creature turned, its attention drawn to the noise. It charged, its claws slashing wildly as it closed the distance. "Come on, just a little closer," Vela muttered, backing toward the exit. When the creature was right next to the core, she fired one last shot, hitting the core dead center. The explosion was deafening, the blast wave knocking Vela off her feet. She hit the ground hard, her ears ringing as the world spun around her. When she looked up, the creature was gone, its body reduced to smoldering debris. Vela staggered to her feet, her body aching, but her spirit unbroken. She turned and ran, following her crew and the children toward safety. The fight wasn't over, but for now, they had won a crucial victory. The Council's denial. The small transport ship hurtled through space, its engines straining to maintain speed. Inside, the rescued children huddled together, their wide eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Vela sat at the cockpit, her hand steady on the controls, but her mind raced with the events they had just escaped. Behind her, Alaric and Jorak worked tirelessly to patch up wounds and assess the damage to their equipment. Despite their success in freeing the children, the crew was battered and exhausted. The alien attack had been more ferocious than they had anticipated. "We're approaching the Council station," Vela said, her voice breaking the tense silence. "This is where we make our stand." Alaric frowned, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. "You really think the Galactic Council will do anything? They've ignored every other human plea." "They can't ignore this," Vela replied firmly. "We have proof now. These children, their suffering will speak louder than any words." As the station loomed into view, a towering structure of sleek metal and bright lights, the weight of their mission settled heavily on the crew. This was humanity's last chance to expose the truth and demand justice. The council chamber was as imposing as ever, a grand hall filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. Their voices echoed through the space, a cacophony of arguments and accusations. The humans had sent a priority request for an emergency hearing, but the council's response had been lukewarm at best. When Vela and her crew entered, the room fell silent. All eyes turned toward them, some filled with curiosity, others with disdain. "What is the meaning of this disruption?" a large reptilian alien demanded, his voice a low growl. Humans barging in uninvited again. Vela stepped forward, her chin high. "We're here to present evidence of a crime so heinous it demands immediate action. We've rescued human children from captivity, enslaved and tortured by a species under the Council's jurisdiction." A murmur spread through the chamber, but most faces remained skeptical. One representative, a slender, insect-like creature, clicked its mandibles in irritation. "Humans always claim victimhood. Where is your proof?" Vela gestured to the children, who stood just outside the chamber's doors. At her signal, they walked in, their small forms hesitant but determined. Gasps rippled through the room as the aliens took in the sight of bruised faces, frail bodies, and haunted eyes. "This is your proof," Vela said, her voice cold with anger. "These children were taken, experimented on, and left to die in a facility hidden under council oversight. And we're not leaving until you do something about it." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, a tall bird-like alien rose from its seat, its feathers ruffling. Even if what you say is true, this is an isolated incident. It does not justify disrupting the entire council. Alaric stepped forward, unable to contain his frustration. An isolated incident. You call the imprisonment of innocent children isolated. How many more facilities like this exist that you've conveniently ignored? Enough. Another representative snapped. This council does not bow to human dramatics. Without further evidence. Further evidence, Vela interrupted, her voice sharp. These children are evidence enough. How many more need to suffer before you take responsibility? The room erupted into chaos, with representatives shouting over one another. Some called for an investigation, while others dismissed the humans entirely. Vela's heart sank as she realized how deeply entrenched the council's apathy was. Outside the chamber, the crew gathered in a quiet corridor. The children sat nearby, their eyes reflecting the hopelessness that Vela tried so hard to conceal. They're not going to do anything, are they? Alaric asked bitterly. Vela leaned against the wall, her hands clenched into fists. They're too afraid to admit their own failings. If they acknowledge this, they'd have to acknowledge all the other crimes they've ignored. So what now? Jorek asked. We can't let this go. Vela looked at the children, then back at her crew. We don't let it go. If the council won't act, we'll find another way. We'll make sure the galaxy knows what happened. Her determination reignited a spark of hope in the crew. They weren't done fighting. Not by a long shot. Humanity's defiance. The hum of the ship's engines filled the cabin as Vela sat at the command console, staring at the holographic display. The Galactic Council's refusal to act echoed in her mind, their dismissive words replaying like a cruel mantra. They didn't care about the children, about the suffering, or about justice. But humanity did. Alaric stepped into the cockpit, his face set with determination. The transmission is ready. Are you sure you want to do this? If the council finds out. They already know, Vela interrupted, her voice calm but firm. And they've made their choice. Now it's time for us to make ours. The transmission went live moments later, broadcasting across the galaxy on every available channel. Vela's image appeared on countless screens, her voice cutting through the static like a blade. To the citizens of the galaxy, she began, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. This is a message from the people of Earth. For too long, the Galactic Council has turned a blind eye to atrocities committed under its watch. Today, we bring you the truth they tried to bury. Behind her, images and recordings began to play, footage of the children's suffering, the grim facility where they were held, and the brutal experiments they endured. The evidence was undeniable, a stark contrast to the Council's claims of ignorance. These children, Vela continued, are the victims of a system that values power over justice, silence over accountability. But humanity refuses to stay silent. Across the galaxy, the broadcasts spread like wildfire. On distant planets and bustling space stations, citizens from countless species watched in shock and horror. The footage was raw and unfiltered, leaving no room for doubt. The cries of the children, the cold sterility of their prison, and the desperation of their rescuers painted a damning picture. On one frontier world, a group of miners paused their work, their alien features twisting with outrage. On another, a scholar with scaled skin watched with wide, unblinking eyes. Even in the heart of the Council's own territory, whispers of rebellion began to stir. Back on the ship, the crew monitored the transmission's reach. Jorek leaned over the console, his claws tapping nervously. The response is overwhelming. Hundreds of messages are pouring in already. People are demanding answers. Alaric nodded, a rare smile breaking through his grim expression. It's working. They're listening. Vela didn't respond. She stood by the viewport, staring into the void of space. She knew the fight was far from over. The Council wouldn't take this lightly, and their retaliation could come at any moment. The retaliation came faster than expected. A squadron of sleek council ships appeared on the ship's radar, their weapons armed and their intentions clear. The crew braced for impact as the first volley of fire rocked their vessel. "We can't outrun them," Jorek shouted, his claws gripping the controls. "What do we do?" Vela turned, her expression resolute. "We don't run, we fight." The battle was fierce and chaotic. The crew worked together with the precision born of desperation, dodging enemy fire and returning shots with everything they had. But the council ships were faster and better equipped. It was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. In a desperate maneuver, Vela directed the ship toward a nearby asteroid field. The dense cluster of rocks offered a slim chance of evasion, but it was their only hope. The ship wove through the debris, narrowly avoiding collisions as the council ships pursued. "They're still on us," Alaric shouted, his voice strained. "We can't keep this up." Vela gritted her teeth, her mind racing. "We don't have to. Just get us to the edge of the field. Trust me." As they reached the far side of the asteroid field, the ship's engines strained under the stress. The pursuing council ships closed in, their weapons locking onto their target. But Vela wasn't finished yet. "Now," she commanded. Alaric activated a hidden payload, an array of explosive charges the crew had salvaged during their journey. The charges detonated, sending a cascade of asteroids crashing into the pursuing ships. The shockwave rocked their vessel, but the council ships were caught in the destruction, their sleek forms torn apart by the debris. Cheers erupted in the cabin as the crew realized they had survived. But Vela didn't share their relief. She knew this was only the beginning. The transmission had sparked a fire across the galaxy, but it had also painted a target on humanity's back. The Council would stop at nothing to silence them. Yet, as Vela looked at her crew, their faces lit with hope and determination, she knew they wouldn't back down. "This is our fight now," she said, her voice steady. "For the children, for humanity, for everyone who's ever been silenced. We'll make them listen." The crew nodded, their resolve unshakable. Together, they turned their ship toward the next chapter of their journey, ready to face whatever came next, the Galactic Reckoning. The Galactic Council chambers were silent, an oppressive stillness hanging in the air. Around the grand circular table sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy, their expressions a mix of anger, fear, and denial. Before them, the holographic projection of humanity's broadcast played on an endless loop. The cries of the children echoed in the room, accusing and unrelenting. "This cannot be true." One counselor, a reptilian figure with shimmering scales, hissed, "Earth is spreading lies to weaken us." "They have proof," countered another, a hulking insectoid with iridescent wings. "This isn't something that can be fabricated. Our failure is undeniable." In the far reaches of the galaxy, the broadcast's impact continued to ripple. Civil unrest erupted on dozens of planets. Protests filled the streets of the Council's capital world, with beings of all species demanding justice. The sight of imprisoned human children had awakened something universal, a sense of shared outrage and responsibility. In one colony, a group of alien miners who had once dismissed humanity as primitive now raised banners with Earth's emblem, their chants calling for the Council's downfall. On a distant trade station, merchants refused to sell supplies to Council vessels, their silent boycott echoing louder than any speech. The galaxy was uniting, but not under the Council's banner. It was rallying around humanity. Aboard the human ship, Vela watched the chaos unfold on her display screen. Reports from every corner of the galaxy filled the room, each one a small victory. Jorek, sitting nearby, leaned back with a satisfied growl. "They never expected this," he said. "The Council's grip is slipping, and they're panicking." Alaric stood by the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back. "Panic makes them dangerous. They'll strike back soon, and it won't be subtle." "They already did," Vela replied grimly, pointing to the latest report. "A Council fleet is heading for Earth." Earth's defenders were ready. Humanity's fleet, a patchwork of sleek new ships and ancient relics brought back to life, awaited the Council's arrival. The Council expected a fractured species, but they would find a united front. In the command center of Earth's flagship, Admiral Carter stared at the tactical display. "We don't just fight for ourselves," he said, addressing his officers. "We fight for those children, for every species that the Council oppressed, and for the galaxy's future." The officers saluted, their faces set with determination. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council's fleet was vast, a wall of ships blotting out the stars. But humanity fought with ingenuity and ferocity that no one could have anticipated. Vela's ship, now part of Earth's fleet, darted between enemy vessels, striking with precision. Jorek growled in satisfaction as another Council cruiser exploded in their wake. "They're strong, but they're predictable," he said. Alaric nodded. "And that's their weakness. We don't play by their rules." In the midst of the chaos, Vela received a transmission. A familiar face appeared on her screen. A Council defector who had once dismissed humanity as irrelevant. Now, their voice was urgent. "The Council is falling apart," they said. "Even their own people are turning against them. If you push hard enough, this could be their end." Vela's eyes narrowed. "And what about the children? Where are they now?" "They're safe," the defector assured her. "The Council abandoned the facility after the broadcast. They knew they couldn't hold it." Relief washed over Vela, but it was quickly replaced by determination. "Then we finish this." As the battle raged, the Council's fleet began to falter. Humanity's relentless assault, combined with growing dissent within the Council ranks, proved too much. One by one, enemy ships retreated or surrendered. On Earth's flagship, Admiral Carter gave the order. "Broadcast to all frequencies." Vela's image once again appeared on screens across the galaxy, her voice calm and resolute. "The Galactic Council has fallen. Their reign of silence and oppression ends today. Humanity stands with all those who seek justice and freedom. Together, we will build a better future." The war was over, but the work had just begun. On planets across the galaxy, beings of all species celebrated the Council's downfall. But Vela and her crew knew this was only the first step. In the aftermath, humanity became a beacon of hope and unity. Former Council worlds reached out to Earth, seeking alliances and guidance. The children who had been imprisoned were returned to their families, their scars a reminder of the fight that had united the galaxy. Vela stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the stars. "We didn't just win a war," she said quietly. "We changed the galaxy." Alaric joined her, a rare smile on his face, and we're just getting started. As the ship sailed into the unknown, humanity's legacy began to take shape, a legacy of resilience, defiance, and hope.